Preparing for this event has been quite exciting for me. I remember approaching Ben and Mitch back in spring and asking them what their thoughts were on making a paperweight that would commemorate the original Pantan Silkworm weight. For me, I thought it would be interesting to create a modern Silkworm weight which would symbolize a bridge connecting the classic antique paperweights with the modern paperweights and showing how the process has changed, but in many ways how the processes have stayed the same. My journey in glass began probably in November of 1989. A man named Paul Stankert was looking for some help in his glass studio. At the time, I wasn't really happy with my graphic art job. I ended up quitting, and with Paul's invitation, I came to become Paul's assistant.
I started making paperweights in earnest in 1969, and it was interesting because I was becoming more familiar with the Millville Rose and Charles Casian's interpretation of the Millville Rose. And so I started making animals to incorporate into the clear glass. And then from animals I went to a flower, and then it seemed like the second, third, fourth, and fifth floral effort, the work changed radically from a blossom and a stem, to leaves, to buds, to roots, to multiple blossoms and buds, and it just unfolded, and it's still unfolding 40-some years later. I mean, you talk about a creative focus.
I realized that Paul's work, these paperweights, were not just paperweights, but intricate, delicate, fragile works of art, each unique and one of a kind.
Paul Stankert, who's considered one of the greatest 21st century lamp workers. If you look at his early weights, the artistry was always there. He didn't want to do stylized flowers like the antique or the modern French companies. He was a naturalist. So instead of laminating all his colors on white to make them brighter and more vibrant, on his leaves he would put a little bit of orange glass in or brown glass in to make it look more like a leaf and a stem look on a plant in nature.
Right now I would say that the individual artists working today were better than the individual artists that were working in the 70s. Even some of the artists that were working then that are still working now have their techniques and their mastery of their craft has increased dramatically, that their work is like night and day.
Today, working in a glass shop is much different than in the past because, today, we have lots of sound. We got iPods playing, we got music, we got airplanes flying over our head every 30 seconds. When I begin a new project, such as a Silkworm, I found myself, when I was experimenting with this weight, I found it helpful to turn off everything. I do try to put myself back in time as the old glass workers, when things were not as congested. We do need to find some calmness in our lives, and I find it very helpful for me when I'm designing a new weight, is to find that calmness and kind of shut out everything. I like incorporating different processes into my work. For instance, the Silkworm, I'm borrowing a technique out of the stained glass tradition, where I get little pigments and you mix them up with a little gum arabic and a little water, and you use a process called a moulé, where you grind, like a grinding stone. And you can create lots of nice little shades. And for me, incorporating different crafts is essential sometimes, because it'll create a different effect which you wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
It's just phenomenal. As I said, the techniques and what they're able to do with the glass, whether it's the bouquets or designs, or in some cases it's like with David Graeber working with Eddie Poor. Eddie Poor did fancy cutting for the Bamfords in the early, late 80s. And he was always a polisher and restorer. David took it to a new level. He does these gorgeous bouquets and designs and what look like cut crystal baskets, whether they're round or oval. And David took it one step farther. He actually made a signature cane for Eddie Poor. So before, if you were familiar with the industry, you knew he did some of these cuttings. Now, if you look at the bottom of the weight, there's a David Graeber cane, there's an Eddie Poor cane in the weight, because as David will tell you, the cutting of the glass is as much an art form as the creating of the flowers in the glass.
I really feel fortunate to be working with Eddie Poor, who is a master cutter from Silkworm, Mass. I believe Ed has been working in glass for 42 years and probably worked on about 8,000 weights in his career. I really commend Ed on his dedication to his craft, and I feel privileged to have such a master craftsman working on my paperweights.
Yeah, it's kind of the first revival period of the classic period of paperweight making in the 1800s. Definitely some of the pieces that are made today are just destined to end up in museums and become the great and the rare pieces down the road. I know at one time I felt really bad about having great cutting skills and being born in the 1950s. I felt like I got gypped. I should have been born 100 years earlier. But later in my career I discovered why I'm here now, and it's to repair all the classic period weights and bring them back to life, as well as to be available to cut the contemporary paperweights that are out there now.
Some of the modern tools today are pretty much the same, such as the tools for shaping. For instance, the wooden molds. I like the smell of the wooden molds when shaping the weight because it really takes me back in time and reminds me how all the past shops were billing of charred cherry wood. It's just a great smell, and when you smell that wood, you know that you're in a glass shop.
I think it's about time the Rubloff collection gets shown again and expanded. I did get to see it one time, way back when, and there's some fantastic pieces in there.
I went up to New York to experience this one auction that had serious, very rare antique French paperweights. Arthur was bidding on work. It was kind of cute, very nonchalant. He was buying a lot of paperweights, and then the Silkworm paperweight came up for bid. I think it was Pantan who was attributed to that paperweight. So Arthur really got serious.
And the bidding went up to say $15,000 or $20,000 fairly quickly, and then Albert Rubloff and his competitor dropped out, and they bumped it up another $150,000 between the two of them.
I think it went over $200,000. You know, I mean, it was a serious price.
The Pantan Silkworm. This paperweight was owned by very well-known dealers, very well-known collectors throughout the years. The weight also has influenced a number of contemporary artists. And going through the literature, you can find, in fact, if you Google silkworms, you'll see a number of contemporaries who have made weights patterned after the silkworm or influenced by the silkworm. And today we'll all be able to see another artist, David Graeber, who's been greatly influenced by this weight.
I find it fascinating how, how this silkworm ended up at the Art Institute of Chicago. As we said, the theme is, journey. What an interesting journey. Coming from Europe. When I look at an old antique weight, I can't help but think of the person who made it. These treasures that are passed on and displayed at these museums, we're very fortunate. It's not only, for me, the silkworm is not only a piece of nature incorporated in glass. For me, I want my silkworm to tell a story. Sometimes the the story is more important than the actual paperweight. As an artist, that's what we try to do, is We try to tell a story sometimes in what our artwork is about.